It is 2 in the morning on a freezing Tuesday in northern Spain. A team of tactical police officers is tracking a white, unmarked transit van driving through a heavily forested road without its headlights on. For months, Europol wiretaps have monitored this cartel. They know this van is carrying millions of dollars in illicit cargo, bound for a shadow network in Asia. The tactical team expects to find illegal weapons. They expect to find hundreds of kilos of pure cocaine or heroin. The signal is given. They box the van in, but when they throw open the back doors, they don't find drugs. They find dozens of white styrofoam coolers. And when they open the coolers, they find water. Water that is moving. Thousands of microscopic, completely transparent glass eels, writhing under a flashlight beam. The police haven't busted a drug cartel. They have just intercepted the transport division of a $3 billion biological shadow economy. Wholesale value, $3,000 per pound. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how this criminal machine is built, how the money moves, and why the fish on your dinner plate tonight might be the final transaction of a global smuggling operation that law enforcement still cannot fully stop. Because in the global underworld, smuggling cocaine is for amateurs. The real money, the untouchable, sovereign, wealth-level money, is in baby fish. This is the anatomy of the world's most lucrative wildlife smuggling ring. We are going to track the dirty money from the freezing rivers of France to the underground mafia brokers of Spain, all the way to the heavily guarded laundering operations of Asia. Welcome to the Invisible Cartel. In economics, there is a golden rule. If you artificially restrict the supply of something, but global demand keeps climbing, you do not solve the problem. You just create a highly organized black market. That is exactly what happened here. European authorities watched the native eel population collapse by 90% due to decades of overfishing. So the European Union passed a ruthless law, a total zero-tolerance ban on exporting the European glass eel outside of the continent. The legal trade was instantly paralyzed. But across the world, in Japan and China, a billion-dollar culinary industry needed those eels to survive. They could not breed them in captivity, so they depended entirely on wild supply. The legal vacuum was created, and nature abhors a vacuum. The price of a single pound of transparent glass eels rocketed past $3,000. Biologically, these are the juvenile stage of the European eel. So small and colorless, they are nearly invisible to the naked eye. And precisely because they are so difficult to identify and document, they became the perfect contraband. The illegal wildlife trade, according to the World Wildlife Fund's 2023 report, is worth $23 billion annually, with a massive portion of that coming from aquatic species. These eels sit at the very top of that food chain in terms of profit per gram. Overnight, the rivers of Europe were invaded by the first level of the syndicate, the poachers. The front line of this cartel operates entirely by moonlight. In the dead of winter, hundreds of poachers descend on the river mouths of France and Spain. They are highly organized. They use military-grade thermal imaging scopes to spot river police hiding in the tree lines. They communicate using encrypted apps like Signal and Telegram, dropping precise GPS coordinates of unguarded riverbanks. A text message pops up on a burner phone. Sector 4 clear. Police boat passed. 30 minutes. Using fine mesh nets, they scoop the invisible fish as they migrate in from the ocean. A good poacher can pull $10,000 worth of live biomatter out of the river in a single night. But the poachers can't ship the fish to Asia themselves. They need to hand the product off. Before the sun comes up, the poachers load the wet catch into coolers and drive to designated, constantly shifting drop points. Abandoned warehouses, dark highway rest stops, muddy parking lots deep in the woods. This is where they meet the second level of the organization, the brokers. The mafia middlemen. The handoff takes less than 2 minutes. The poacher is handed untraceable stacks of 50 and 100 euro notes. The broker takes the wet coolers and disappears. The fish has officially entered the cartel pipeline. The brokers are the logistical backbone of this entire operation. Their job is to pull together catches from hundreds of different poachers across the continent, consolidating millions of dollars worth of live fish into central, hidden holding tanks inside suburban Spanish and French basements. Hidden camera footage from law enforcement raids has shown massive plastic pools set up in underground garages, hooked up to industrial oxygen aerators to keep the eels alive. But here's the question that investigators kept asking themselves early on. Why are sophisticated criminal networks wasting their time with fish? Why not stick to weapons or narcotics? The answer comes down to what criminal analysts call a risk matrix. Think of it as a simple grid. One side measures profit. The other side measures prison time. If you are caught smuggling narcotics across international borders, you will spend decades in a maximum security prison. But wildlife trafficking laws are notoriously weak. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime's 2023 Global Wildlife Crime Report, traffickers caught moving endangered species often face charges equivalent to customs violations, meaning fines and little to no jail time. The cartel boss pays the fine as a routine business expense, and the mule walks free. Maximum profit, minimum consequence. This legal loophole is exactly why massive Asian triad networks began partnering directly with European organized crime. But to get the product to Asia, they had to hack commercial aviation, because you cannot wrap 100,000 living, breathing animals in duct tape. If the eels panic, they produce a toxic slime that suffocates the entire batch. So they engineered what investigators now call the breathing suitcase. They gut standard commercial luggage and line the interior walls with heavy-duty thermal space blankets to mask the water density from airport X-ray scanners. They fill medical-grade bladders with the eels, chill the water to exactly 4 degrees Celsius to put the fish in a temporary coma, and inject the bags with pure, pressurized oxygen. From the outside, the bag looks like any other checked piece of luggage on the belt. With the hardware ready, the syndicate hires the transport, the water mules. The cartel recruits college students drowning in debt, desperate tourists, and people carrying clean passports. They are paid a flat fee of $3,000 to $5,000 in cash. Their only job is to walk up to the airline check-in desk, smile, and check the bag. The mule sits in economy class watching a film, completely aware that beneath their feet, in the freezing cargo hold, is $250,000 in illegal wildlife. But the physics of commercial flight are violent. Changes in cabin pressure and temperature mean that up to 50% of the eels suffocate or freeze to death before the plane lands. So the cartels built what they call an acceptable mortality rate into their financial model. Even with half the cargo dead on arrival, the profit on a single suitcase still clears over $100,000 after the mule's fee is deducted. The numbers make the loss irrelevant. In 2021, authorities reported that over 90% of some targeted endangered species were actively involved in illegal trafficking networks. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime documented that in that same year, law enforcement seized approximately $1.1 billion worth of illegal wildlife products globally. And yet, as massive as those seizures sound, enforcement officers privately admitted it barely touched the volume moving through the system. In 2018, Europol recognized that the eel trade had become one of the largest sources of illicit cartel funding on the continent. They launched a multinational task force known as Operation Lake. But they didn't just arrest mules at the airport. They did what the Federal Bureau of Investigation did to organized crime in the 1980s. They followed the money. Investigators tapped burner phones and discovered a sophisticated money laundering network. When Asian buyers purchased the fish, they did not wire millions of dollars directly to a European bank account. That would instantly trigger anti-money laundering alerts at any financial institution. Instead, the cartel set up fake, legal seafood export companies in Spain. The Asian buyers would send money to these shell companies, claiming they were legally purchasing cheap, frozen squid or tilapia. The Spanish shell company would issue a fraudulent receipt, and the dirty cartel money became legally clean on paper. Using that paper trail, Europol kicked down the doors of the brokers. In a single season, they dismantled criminal networks operating across Spain, France, and Portugal. They seized over 2 million euros in cash hidden inside walls. They seized fleets of luxury vehicles. They tore apart underground basements, holding millions of dollars worth of live biomatter. But behind closed doors, the authorities knew a hard truth. The busts didn't stop the cartel. If one broker goes to prison, 3 more appear the next day to claim his territory. The financial incentive is simply too powerful, because as long as those suitcases make it to Asia, the most sophisticated part of the entire crime takes place: the biological laundromat. You cannot serve an illegally poached, smuggled animal at a legal, high-end restaurant. You have to wash it first. When the surviving suitcases clear customs in Hong Kong, the glass eels are rushed to heavily fortified aquaculture farms in mainland China. These farms are entirely legal. They are licensed to raise and harvest the local Asian eel species. But the syndicates exploit a massive biological loophole. They secretly dump the smuggled European eels into the exact same concrete vats as the legal Asian eels. Over the next 18 months, the glass eels grow from microscopic, transparent worms into thick, dark adult fish. And once fully grown, it is biologically impossible for a customs agent or a health inspector to visually distinguish the illegal European species from the legal Asian species. The two look identical to the human eye. The farm owners then falsify the international export certificates that are supposed to track the legal origin of each animal. The certificates, issued under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species Framework, claim the entire batch was legally raised locally. The dirty fish is now legally clean on paper. It is slaughtered, glazed in sweet soy sauce, vacuum sealed, and shipped in massive freezer containers to London, Los Angeles, and New York, straight to restaurant menus. Scientists and conservation groups are now pushing back using a tool that traffickers didn't anticipate: DNA barcoding. According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, over 1,500 aquatic species are currently listed as threatened or endangered, partly due to illegal trafficking. DNA barcoding allows forensic labs to trace the precise geographic origin of any fish tissue, even after the animal has been processed and cooked. It is the biological equivalent of a fingerprint left at a crime scene. Conservationists argue this technology, combined with stronger international enforcement cooperation, represents one of the few real weapons capable of breaking the laundering cycle that the biological loophole currently protects. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime's 2023 Global Wildlife Crime Report confirmed that the illegal fish trade is still growing, not shrinking. New legislation is being proposed across multiple countries to strengthen the legal framework. But critics, including some local fishing communities in France and Spain, argue that blanket enforcement also harms legitimate small-scale fishermen who depend on legal eel harvesting for their income. The debate between protection and livelihood is unresolved, and cartels exploit that political tension to operate in the gray zones it creates. When you order unagi tonight, the chef preparing it is not a criminal. The forged paperwork declares the fish legal, but the DNA inside that meat carries the ghost of a 3,000-mile smuggling operation, a network of moonlit riverbanks, encrypted phones, breathing suitcases, and fake seafood companies. You are not just eating sushi. You are sitting at the end of a $3 billion underworld supply chain that starts in the freezing rivers of Europe and ends invisibly on a wooden board in a restaurant you trust. We have covered the money trail and the laundering operation, but the sheer engineering behind how these cartels keep 100,000 animals alive inside the freezing, pressurized cargo hold of a commercial jet is a masterclass in illicit problem solving. If you want the full breakdown of how the breathing suitcases bypass airport X-ray systems and what happens when the physics of flight go wrong mid-journey, click the video on your screen right now. I will see you there.